You're tuned in to the MtG Cable cast, where they cover Magic, the Gathering Finance. All right? You don't know about it? You're tuned in right now and get ready to learn some shit. Buckle your seatbelts and light a blunt and get ready for the MtG Cable cast. Starring Reptar and Thirsty, them onion head motherfuckers.
Alrighty guys, welcome to the newest episode of the Cabal cast. And this week, we're getting kind of on topic, but staying on topic. And basically that is, over the last couple years, a lot of people have been making a move. Well, I won't say a lot, but some people have been making a move away from Magic into other verticals. And this is something that I myself started doing a couple of years ago. Shops around are kind of pulling a similar move, and other shops are doing the opposite. So we're basically going to take a look, based on my experience, what I think. Let's take it away.
So up top, the first question I have is in regards to traveling and working a sports card show. Can you give us a breakdown of what that is like? How early do you leave before the show if it's a travel show? Generally, what are hall hours? Do you wheel and deal after hours, like we've talked about for Magic? When is loadout generally? And then when do you fly out after a show if it is a travel show?
So it's similar to Magic. Even, with like more Pokemon-oriented shows, like Collecticons, or more sports-oriented shows, the hours tend to be a lot different than what you see at like a Magic Fest hall or what you saw back in the old Grand Prix days.
Yep.
They're pretty much all on Saturday, Sunday, like 10 to 6 or noon to 4 on Sunday occasionally. Now, there are some larger events that are like longer than that, but most of the ones that you're going to spend time traveling to are just your like Saturday, Sunday afternoon type stuff. Now for the multi-day shows, which are like your bigger ones, like Dallas, Chicago Sportsland, Burbank has one.
The Fanatics Fest that you went to.
Fanatics Fest, the National, like those bigger ones. Basically what's going to happen is most people are going to fly in the day before or day of. And one of the reasons you can do that is the setup time is not nearly as long. At almost all of these, you already have tables with tablecloths and everything set down in front of you, and the individual branding and stuff like that doesn't stick out as much, so it's not important. But your setup is basically, let me throw some cases out, and a lot of times they'll have them available for rent as well.
Yes.
So you don't have to provide your own, which is super nice, and another thing that makes it easier to fly.
Something they do at Collecticons as well, I learned.
And I think it's like $50 a case. And they just schlep them to every event. They probably pay for their event in just those. But it's basically, kind of the same tenure or basically like frequency we talked about before, where a Midwest show, it's the same thing. It's going to be done by 2 o'clock on Sunday because everyone's going to go back home. And you kind of just travel around that schedule. And that's basically the same as it is for a Magic Fest, Grand Prix, Collecticon, a little bit different for the National. That's like the Gen Con for sports.
Yep.
So a little bit different. But yeah, it's pretty much you leave the day before. The hall is over at 6. Now, some events do have trade nights on Fridays and Saturdays.
Okay.
And those are basically, do you want to, do you not? The wheel and deal after hours happens every single time, usually in the hallway right outside the venue. Like literally in the hotel sometimes. You'll leave the banquet hall and there's just people sitting down with Zions open trading on the floor.
For those that don't know, Zions are slab cases. Prior to that, you might have heard people talking about Pelican cases. Pelican is this kind of agnostic brand where you can buy a case of any dimensions and they will fill it with styrofoam for you, and you can either pick from a catalog of specifically shaped cutouts, or you could give them the dimensions and they will cut it for you. People use it a lot for photography. If you were into archery, that was one of the only ways you could actually get a case that would fly your bow. Musicians tend to use Pelican as well because they are over-engineered, and Zion basically took that model and ran with it. But they also give you those cute little locks on the Zions.
It's actually not that much different. That is one thing that I think throughout every vertical seems to be mostly the same for shows.
Yep. And then for the fly out, we've talked about previously, you can expect certain vendors to basically pack it up before the Magic Fest actually ends, and they'll be at the airport.
Cool stuff.
Yep. That night to fly out. But we've also talked about how different and how lucrative sports shows can be, which does offer the opportunity to fly out next day. So, and understanding your schedule and other people's schedules at the show might be different. Is like the next day travel out generally standard?
It really depends. I know a lot of people that it depends on the city. Some of them it just depends on, hey, did I do well enough that I don't really need to stick around for anything extra to hit up a local store or something like that. I usually just want to get home, and knowing that the, hall closes at usually 4 on Sunday, and my rule on Sunday is I won't be the first person to pack up, but I will sure as shit be the second.
Yeah.
I usually like to fly out Sunday just so I can be home.
Yeah. No. Magic Fest make that very difficult, but a hall closing at 4 or 6 make that much more possible.
And especially Sunday is one of those days where some people at a lot of, like collecticons and stuff won't even show up. They'll just leave the booth and be done.
Yep. Or they'll take a really short day. They'll show up because they've made an appointment effectively.
Yeah.
So they'll be there for that. Otherwise, like you said, they're just gone. So we've talked about on the podcast a number of times about the national and some other larger shows, but we never talked about, and those have all been shows you've attended, but we've never talked about the opportunity that is in front of you if you want to vend larger shows. So the way I frame this, because it's just how I understand things, is in terms of like a Magic Fest or a Grand Prix, that kind of size event. If you wanted to vend sports cards, how frequently could you actually travel to an event of that size? We're talking, let's say like 2,000 to 3,000 people in the room concurrently.
That size pretty much every weekend within 4 hours. Like within a 4-hour radius, every weekend one of those shows happens. Pretty much everywhere you are in the country. Now, the one thing that is different about this as opposed to like a Magic Fest is obviously, and you know how great it was when we literally had like 46 Magic Fests a year. You could look at one website to find all of those. That's not the case with sports shows. There's a couple websites that are like MTG Mom used to be.
It's still around. But it's still the thing. It still works.
Oh, great! That's awesome. I'm glad they kept it up. But like MTG Mom, where it's like an aggregate of local shows, but there's no national network really, so it's a lot harder to find them. But once you find them, not only are they everywhere, the other thing is that because there are so many of them all over the place, it's actually kind of easy to get into as a vendor.
Okay.
Not to mention the entry cost is way lower.
So, follow up on that, and you kind of answered part of it is, since there are so many nationally, they're easy to get into. Is it because also the same person or company runs a number of them? Like we're used to tournament organizers in the past. They would be regional. You had CFB in the West. You would have Legion in the center alongside PES, and then Star City eventually came up in the East. Yeah.
So it is regional, but it's regional in a much less structured way. So, for example, Coach Estes, Ron, he's been doing the St. Louis show for like 40 years now. He does St. Louis, he does Paducah, Kentucky, he does Springfield, Illinois, and a couple of others. So he has like his little pocket.
Got it.
But 3 other regional organizers overlap with different sections of his little pocket. And for the most part, the national shows, there's really each national show is kind of its own entity. The one exception is the Dallas Sports Card Show the Dallas Sports Card Show presents the Chicago Sports Spectacular. Sorry, that's a mouthful. I had to make sure I got it right. And they have 2 that they do, basically. One in Dallas, one in Chicago. But for the most part, it's a lot of really less centralized regional organizers that kind of make that possible.
Okay, so you have to know the person that kind of operates within the region, then you can kind of leapfrog there. Okay, as opposed to like anime cons where each con has its own structure and you have to sit on the wait list until you're let in, and then you just kind of deal with the person or the company, generally the company that represents, and get in there.
And there is some of that still. Like Ron shows are mostly waitlisted.
Okay.
But there are other event organizers you can go to that do events in the area that you could get in with.
Yep.
So
That's
it
fair.
equals out.
All right. So while we're talking about the frequency of travel, and this question's a little bit nebulous, how often do you need to travel to see similar returns as a larger Magic show? And for those that haven't vended a larger show, that detail isn't usually on anybody but your show lead. Your show lead is the one that's actually, generally speaking, counting money in and out and comparing buy list against like locked in sale prices, and they'll know how well a show is going, not at any given point, but let's say at the end of each day. They'll have a really good idea of how lucrative the event has been. And similarly, it's going to be there for sports cards show. So that's the kind of like break down that wall.
So there's two different ways to look at it. Are you going to get the percentage margin return as you would at a Magic event, or are we looking for that big like six figures between buys and sales? So I'll answer it with two different things. The first is for the margin. So we have a monthly here. It's Ron's monthly that I do every month, the Machinist Hall show, where I pay for 3 tables for $120, and I only use one of them. I split with my sports partner. And from that one, I have usually, by 11 to noon, generated $3K of revenue for what cost me $40 in 3 hours, which is like insane.
Insane, yeah.
So that is actually, a lot of times you don't have to travel to get that. Like if it's just you yourself, you can almost always get it from local shows just about. Now, the other trade-off there is those dollar amounts. Those are the ones that I would have to travel for within that 4-hour window. But I can get the margin amount literally by driving 20 minutes away. It's across the street from my favorite soup dumpling place, so I get a good lunch afterwards. And I literally am usually done by 1 o'clock or once I hit 4K.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Okay. So the larger shows, so the National and the Dallas Sports Card Show presents the Chicago Sports Card.
Spectacular, yeah.
Spectacular. Those are the kind of shows where you can actually like wheel and deal your way through. That's like the Gen Con, effectively the Origin, Gamma, etc. of sports cards, right? Where it's just you can blow the doors off of everything.
Yeah, and it's the very interesting thing about it compared to Magic events, and this is something I've mentioned before. Nobody gives a fuck about floor traders. Do it all day, doesn't matter. No one's going to do anything about it. Like, obviously, don't snipe a buy out of somebody's hand. But, yeah, most people don't care about that. So, yeah, you can literally, you don't even have to set up as a vendor to go to these things and just blow the doors off anything. A lot of people will literally show up at one show on Friday, one show on Saturday, one show on Sunday. Fly in, fly out, back and forth. So, it's pretty good.
That is pretty good and pretty interesting. So, next question. Generally speaking, how are sports shows different from Magic shows? And we've got like a litany of things we want to touch on. So it's kind of a broad topic. So up top, we know, generally speaking, the attendee profile of a Magic event is generally going to be your player, and although that gap is starting to widen a bit, we're reaching down further in age. And it seems like things are coalescing more in like late teens and early 20s because of Commander. Sports cards have kind of a different attendee profile where it's just the gamut, right?
Yeah, I mean, it is absolutely absurd, the variety of people that come in. Families, your, StockX hype beasts, institutional investors, like literally Warren Buffett has been at the Dallas Card Show before, like everyone that could possibly have an interest in sports, which is a large variety of people, can be there. And especially now that you're getting more into like pop culture cards and like video games, like the Call of Duty Professional League has its own set with autographs that sell for thousands of dollars. That's the world we live in. Anyways, you get a huge variety, and that's really the thing that's different is you get more business, I think, by specializing your inventory in sports. For example, I'm like soccer because I want my customer profile to be those parents and kids. They're reliable money when the market crashes because we're still kind of bubbled or the recession hits. Those people are still going to be around and they'll still spend money, and that's why I'm able to do what I am.
Yep.
But yeah, that's one of the biggest differences is it is literally the entire gamut. Families, wealthy, unwealthy, everywhere. Yeah. Blue, white collar, everything.
I want to touch on families for a moment because that speaks to the age thing that I was talking about. When you say families, you don't just mean like the nuclear unit. At this point in time, we can have grandfathers, fathers, and
grandkids.
Yeah, all coming. You can literally have 3 to 4 generations of people coming in because sports cards have been around for so long, and sports are so agnostic. Almost every child in the U.S. starts with at least soccer and then can kind of move into t-ball, etc. And baseball, football, basketball, having existed for so long, breeds that kind of generational fan base as well. So you can have the grandfather looking for cards from the 60s, the father looking for the 80s, the child looking for the 2000s, right? The 90s, 2000s. Like, that is a very possible thing you can have with that age group. Switching tracks, talking a little bit about vending at these shows and how they're different. One of the big questions that I had is name recognition. Is it as important in sports as it is in Magic? And do you need to maintain an active presence on socials as well as whatnot? etc., because we've seen like box breaking move from like Facebook to Twitch to whatnot, and that little bit of gambling has become huge, and like some people expect it from some people. You have a lot of things on social like Twitter. There's cards with a story and things like that happen on Twitter that are very public, where not just cards but other pieces of memorabilia go up. And then just in general, you have your business, your iconography. Like you mentioned, generally, you don't have to worry about it when it comes to tablecloths, etc. But, you have a look when you're at a booth. You wear the same shirts. You have the backdrop, etc. Is that kind of stuff as important to a sports card vendor as it is a Magic the Gathering or Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Pokemon vendor?
So it's the only reason I think it's important. So it's not nearly as important to just the person walking around like the normal average customer. It means almost nothing unless they're your local store. At the National especially, there's tons of people that'll stop by their local store, talk to the manager if they're there, anything like that. Where it actually kind of matters, and this is, so there's about 7 people from the sports card industry that I follow on Instagram. And that's it. They're pretty much the only other vendors that I'm going to deal with. But brand recognition is important there. So 2 of them, there was a Dallas that I went to, and my employee Rico was with me, and I made us wear matching shirts that said I got my gooch pierced at Claire's.
Okay.
Sorry, YouTube censors. We're not getting monetized. Anyways, we were known as the Gooch Guys to random people for the rest of the event. One of whom is now like my go-to, this is a weird fucking card, how do I get rid of it guy. Mm-hmm. And he knows me as the Gooch Guy. So
that was brand recognition in reverse, but yeah.
yeah, brand recognition in reverse, basically. But it's more important specifically for the vendor-to-vendor relationships. And I think that is more important because in sports, that arbitrage opportunity exists so much more within like individual regions of the United States.
Yeah.
There's no national TCG player equivalent. It's literally what you can find and what's on eBay.
Yep.
That's it.
Yeah.
So in that regard, that brand recognition is important.
Yeah. That aligns with everything that I experienced at Collecticon as well. Just watching people wander the show and graze, nobody cared about who you were with unless they were a local. There were people that found out Level Up Games was there when they found the Level Up Games booth.
Yep.
Like, all right, cool. And then, they hung out and did what they would do in store with us anyway. So, like...
Yeah, talk, shoot the shit. Whatever,
exactly.
yeah.
Or some people that came up from the DMV area, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, and they were like, oh, I didn't know that anybody from the area was going to be here, right? Like, yeah, okay, yeah. It's not too far. It's like 2.5 hours. Yeah, so expect us at the next one kind of thing. So that I can tell just from my experience at that very wide event that, brand recognition really meant nothing to any of the actual attendees on the floor. The vendor-to-vendor thing seemed more important. That wasn't my job at the event, but, we knew who we were looking for, and we knew who was there from a vendor standpoint as another vendor. So, okay, so, again, digging in a little bit more as being a vendor at a show. Do you need a specialist per sport like you would for different verticals at either an LGS or a vendor? Sometimes you can have them overlap if, things aren't, there's not a lot of action in the vertical, but because each sport has its own stars, its own history,
its own current season, all kinds of stuff. Yeah. So the specialists are, it's interesting because what typically happens with the industry, and this isn't just like employees, because I think in sports for me and in Pokemon a lot as well, for the shop, the people that get into it only get into the things they actually individually like. Mm-hmm. So what I would actually do is, I was really good with football and vintage and soccer. And I was like, okay, well, we need some more. So let's get baseball and hockey. Who do I know that does baseball and hockey? And kind of brought them in to work with and for me. And what actually ended up happening is like, we started chopping booths, and one guy would take all the hockey, one guy would take all the baseball, and then I would get the vintage and soccer, which is mainly what I wanted.
Yep.
So it's less that you need specialists and more that people really, because you can be such a smaller, low overhead operation like this, that you can just bring what you like, and then you don't need specialists. Or if you do, okay, it's just like at a Magic booth where you have, all right, well, this is, our power guy, but he's still going to run it by the boss if he needs to make sure, hey, we cool doing this? This is where I'm at. What do you think? And in that regard, it's, you can have that, but typically there's not a lot of specialization either at the store or at shows outside of your typical show lead, you know, obviously. But, for the most part, everyone that's going to be there, except now that's at local events, at events like the National, or the Burbank show or the Dallas show, you're going to need people. And it's going to need to be someone you trust behind that booth unattended with the amount of money you have brought, or don't bring them.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets into the like, okay, well, I definitely want like some front of house people that can't handle buys because of how much volume you're going to be doing. And as I'm sure you witnessed at Collecticon, at these shows, people are much more likely to be like, oh, that's cool. I want it, but I don't want to wait because there's a million people in here and I have a million booths to look at. Mm-hmm. So it's much more important, I think, at these events and sports and Pokemon to bring the front of house, because the people that are there to sell, more than ever at Magic, they will actually sit there and wait, because if they do see something they want and they have something to trade for it, they will wait. But that's like the only time.
Okay.
So
got it. So you would put your specialists more on the buy side than you would on the sell side. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I also, and this is true of when, we set up Pokemon booths as well, we have a built-in to the sticker, as everybody at a show does. Front of house can say, is it 10% off? Okay, great. I can go this low.
Yep.
And,
yeah, and work from there. Okay. So we talked a little bit about that, about roles at a show, where we talked about show lead, buyers, sellers. Is there ever, at the larger shows, a reason to bring somebody to, like, pull or during the day to restock, or sort overnight to relist? So, like, basically now we're talking specifically like the larger shows. Do you want to have those extra hands at any point in time to be able to basically restock and refill either during a day or pull from buys so you can fill gaps the next day.
So the interesting thing about, specifically, and I'm going to separate this from non-graded singles. So for graded sports and graded Pokemon, what a lot of people at these shows have started doing, myself included, is when we buy it, we'll write what we're in for down somewhere, and we will immediately sticker it at a price to go out. Now, what happens with it is it'll sit in a graded 2-row until we sell through, and then it won't really be like a specific person for it. Mm-hmm. But one of us will be like, hey, do you see a hole? Fill it. Yep. Go through. That is something that we do, unless it's a booth buyout. Because if, hey, we're coming to buy the booth, all right, cool. Then anything we buy just stays here, and we'll work it into the price later.
Okay.
So
got it. Yeah, we refaced exactly that. We refaced our slabs as they moved when they came from stock that had back stock. So we had all of our CGC slabs were in the bargain slab case. So then there was a deal on those, buy one for X, buy two for X times 1.5 or whatever kind of deal.
Yeah.
And as people bought them, we refaced, quickly. But we didn't really replace slabs throughout the day. Everything was repriced at night, but that was a small booth, so we had the opportunity.
Yeah.
So things will sell through enough to the point where it is advantageous to restock.
Absolutely, yes.
And then completely reface, because you don't want holes. You want to be able to send that stuff out.
It is, I think, and I think this is something even true with Magic shoppers now, is if they see empty cards in a case, they are less likely to look.
Yeah.
And that did not used to be the case. I mean, pre-pandemic, I feel like it didn't matter. I'd look at every single vendor.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We're going to pivot real quick from singles over to sealed. And so this is kind of a two-part question. How well does high-end sealed do at events and the LGS? And before we dive into the question, I think it's worthwhile to kind of define what high-end sealed is in sports. So you can certainly buy a box of sport cards. That is a thing. Or you can buy the Panini briefcase.
National Treasures Flawless or any of that, yeah.
That's a five-digit briefcase that has a single pack on the inside or whatever, right? Like great. That's the kind of high-end sealed we're talking about.
So that stuff does not do well at events. That stuff, it moves almost exclusively on a website called DealerNet. Mm-hmm. For those of you that haven't heard me mention that before on the podcast, it's basically a way for a bunch of verified brick and mortar stores to sell sealed product between one another if they get extra allocation, because allocations are really tight.
Yes.
So what typically does well, and this is, I think, this speaks more to the broadness of the audience associated with sports shows. Retail product does very well, like the stuff you get on shelves at Target and Walmart and that stuff.
Yep.
That does incredibly well at shows. Because of the attendees, there's far more of them that are likely to be families than there are people to rip a 20K pack on, at an event.
Yep, yeah.
Those people are there, but you're less likely to run into them.
Okay.
And I think that's, what really does it is for sports, it does cater more to that broad audience that they have.
Okay, that's interesting. I thought the high-end stuff would have done well because of how difficult it is to find, because, like you said, allocation's really tight on that stuff. Like, you can only buy from distro a very small amount of that product, or sometimes the distro offers you like 10 or 20. Cool. Do you want to actually sink 6 digits into this product? If you don't know, you can move it with immediacy. I imagine as that stuff kind of sits around on shelves, it becomes more viable for people to list either on DealerNet to move around or to make those deals behind the scenes. And they might show up at a show, but it's already spoken for. It's already paid for. Somebody's just walking in, picking up their briefcase and heading out.
Exactly,
So we've talked about the vendor-to-vendor interaction a lot here already. One of the things I wanted to check on was washing product for sports. And in my mind, the first thing that comes to mind when I think about this is locality. You're in St. Louis. I'm over in the Mid-Atlantic. We show up at a sports card show together. There's a really good chance that you and I have already worked out behind the scenes. I would think wash trading all of my stuff for the Midwest, St. Louis exclusive maybe, for your stuff for the Mid-Atlantic, so the New York teams, Maryland, Pennsylvania.
So one of the really interesting things about sports product is that it's kind of reverse regionality. So around St. Louis, a Stan Musial autograph is $20. He signed everything. That was how he made all of his money for the last 10 years he was alive, was showing up to do signing appearances locally. Now, if you take a Stan Musial autograph to an event on the East or West Coast, that's a $75 to $100 baseball now.
Okay.
But if you have the hot new kid, when Jordan Walker was him, it all came to St. Louis because everybody here wanted it. So the younger people tend to be, the more their cards funnel towards their home city.
Yes.
Once they're established, it's the exact opposite. You want it everywhere else.
Understood. Okay, so there is the opportunity for us to do that kind of thing, provided there's a reason for it, a hotness for it, and then otherwise it's just, like we've talked about before, moving stock from location to location based on the customer profile.
Yeah.
But that vendor wash does exist. It might not just exist with as much prevalence as we are accustomed to at Magic shows.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've touched on, again, here and there, the idea of lining up deals ahead of time for sports card shows. Is that something you generally want to do for larger events or maybe even some locals, or is it just kind of like a whatever, if somebody reaches out to you, you'll work on it?
So there's a few different ways to go about it. I typically don't really set them up unless it's something I specifically am looking for. Mm-hmm. Less of like I have like a 50K collection I want to get rid of, and more of like, I have the helmet Tony Romo wore for the butt fumble.
Yep.
I'll travel for that. But I think he still has it. Anyways, but there are, at the larger shows especially, whatever possible bulk deal you could want to set up, they will work with you on.
Got it.
There's KK's Consignments is one that's really good. They will buy graded 10s of graded cards, really anything. Absolute dog water for $1 over grading cost. And then they'll throw them up on Whatnot or Fanatics Live or whatever and make a killing. Mm-hmm. So at the and that's something that's very different from your traditional Magic shows, is a lot of those vendors aren't willing to work on stuff like that anymore. They want their deals set up, itemized, everything before they show up.
Yep.
And you don't need that as much at these kinds of shows.
Okay.
A lot more people are just, fly by the seat of their pants. Do I think I can make money on this? How much do I want to spend on that chance? All right, let's do it.
Okay. So Fanatics Live, I don't think we've actually talked about that, but we've talked about comping slabs a lot. Fanatics Live is kind of what you'd say,
it's their version of the PWCC auction house, since they've merged with PWCC, I believe. And it also is an integrated live break platform similar to Whatnot. So a lot of people for sports have started going over to that because there is one very key thing that it gives you: allocation to sports product without being a brick and mortar and without spending 7 figures on above market value product at your distributor to be able to sell sports. Ooh. So a lot of people flooded into that.
Yeah. And the grading historics, the pricing, etc., the what do you want to call it? What is it on eBay?
Comps.
Well, finished auctions kind of thing, where you can look at the prices, right? The comps. That's all free to access, right?
On Fanatics Live, yes. There's a few websites that I would use. 130 Point is a really good one. They'll only show paid-for auctions that are completed. And then there's a few subscription services you can go to. A lot of people use Alt. I like Card Ladder. It really just depends. Card Hedge is another one that some people use.
Yep, but it is effectively kind of like the TCG Player option to the slab world. So if you're out there looking at slabs and you want to say okay, is this actually comped correctly? Then these are the options that you're going to look at. Yeah. So whenever I saw somebody, sitting there looking at their phone, checking graphs and prices for slabbed cards, they were checking Fanatics Live or what have you for whatever specific Pokemon it was, or scanning the QR code on the slab itself to go look at the listing and then comp it themselves from there.
Yeah.
All right. And then the last question, the big one. If you're starting from nothing in terms of sports card vending, do you think this is a good move, moving into sports cards? And you can either be adding it to an existing vertical or replacing a vertical, like something that's failing. So if you were big into Magic and you want to move off of that to sports, go for it. Yu-Gi-Oh, etc.
So I have 3 answers for this. There is my personal answer. There's the shop's answer. And then I actually have a buddy of mine that owns a shop in town that has a third viable answer. So for me, I pivoted personally more into sports and out of Magic. And for me, it was good. But I had an inventory to start with. Mm-hmm. And that was a big help. Unless you are willing, I also had followed those sports for years prior to getting into it, so I had all that contextual knowledge that made it a lot easier. I would not recommend that. Like, starting from scratch, absolutely not. Now, the shop, we've pivoted a little bit out of Magic because events have stopped firing with as much frequency as they used to, a year ago. Mm. We're still firing, but we're not going to be buying as much sealed and stocking as much and running those events. Instead, we are focusing more on Pokemon. And the reason we're doing that, and this I would absolutely recommend doing even starting from scratch, is all indicators are that things are not going to be financially great for the next few years. And during that time, we would much rather be in a product line where families are still going to be trying to engage in activities with their children mm-hmm. that are affordable. And I think that's, I would recommend going into Pokemon because of that. Because the frank reality is we are not in the speculators market that we were in the pandemic with Magic anymore. And without Wizards of the Coast doing more to help local game stores, it's going to be hard.
Yep.
To leave it as a primary vehicle, unless you are the only store in the area, which my buddy's store, he's around within 5 miles, I think 6 or 7 high schools with over 1,000, students total. And he's one of the only places that does F&M. He did not do F&M before he moved to this new location. He started doing it and he's getting, 20, 30 people every week. That worked out great for him.
Yeah.
But that's not something that we can keep up. So we've pivoted into Pokemon. And I think that what it really, boils down to is obviously you need to know your market. Do not, if you know Magic, don't just say, fuck it, we'll get into something else, abandon it and start a new vertical without doing some research about what it is. Some research, even if it's asking your locals, what's another game you guys would want to check out? Are there any other games people would want to check out? If you heard people talking about this stuff, to try to get some kind of information, or even talking to other store owners and seeing what they have.
Yeah.
But for me personally, it was great. For the shop, it's doing very well. For my buddy's shop, pivoting into it has been phenomenal. So
yeah, it makes sense.
No firm answer.
Which is good because it's difficult to see a dedicated gaming store pivoting into sports cards compared to a kind of generalized collector store.
Exactly.
Where you just have some generic name that isn't attached to the idea of gaming. So it is contextual, for your business model as well as your locals. And I like that answer overall because sports is also something that could be done on the side. You don't need somebody else to do it for you.
Exactly.
I assume it's public knowledge. I'm not 100% on it, but the owner of Troll and Toad, once he divested a number of years ago, moved into sports. And so bought a sports card store still in Kentucky and has been running it since. So he made the pivot because Troll and Toad was not the location to do that. They were a gaming vendor. It never could have existed within that same entity. It had to be a new one. So it absolutely makes sense. And I'm kind of glad to see that there really is no firm answer on that because it just reinforces the idea that you have to understand not just what your business is trying to do, but also how to best serve your locals.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Anything else before I move into picks?
Nope. Let's get it started.
All right. So we just came out of the hype episode for Spider-Man. So I'd actually like you to run with this one.
Yes. So I am picking a card that you picked as, I believe, just right.
I would have to take a look, but I think it might have been underhyped. Either way.
Underhyped. Oh, yeah. No, it was under. You're right. It was. And that is Shadow of the Goblin. So this is a 2-mana red enchantment with a bunch of text. So already we're off to a great start as far as I'm concerned. It's red and 1, and it has 2 keywords. And these are important that these keywords exist. So it is Unreliable Visions. At the beginning of your first main phase, discard a card. If you do, draw a card. Undying Vengeance. Whenever you play a land or cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, this enchantment deals 1 damage to each opponent. So this is a rare in a collector booster set that is going to be opened into the ever-loving ground because it's Spider-Man. As of recording, which is on 9/21, we are 5 days away from set release. And we are at 99 cents plus $1.31 shipping. I am saying I have bought, I think, about 15 of these already. But get it on release day when the bottom out hits. Why do I believe in this card? Well, it's a 2-mana red enchantment that does all of the broken things red likes to do. It does damage when you play stuff from not your hand, and it lets you filter, which is just good to have. Most importantly, the second part goes really good with Underworld Breach.
That too.
Which matters in both CEDH and the 60-card formats where Underworld Breach is allowed. This is probably going to see some play in Vintage, I'd have to imagine. At some point, it might not be good, but it probably will. And this is a card that I think follows, and I mentioned it in the Hype episode, the Vicious Shadows trajectory, where it just kind of sits there for a while, and then it explodes one day. Now, reprint equity is important. Goblins are not unique to Spider-Man. However, Unreliable Visions and Undying Vengeance are unique keywords. So that makes me believe that it is tied to the Spider-Man universe. Now, obviously they can change the art and make this universes within if they really want to. But in order for them to do that, it would have to be, I would imagine, in an EDH deck that involves filtering and storming off from the graveyard, which does not sound like a precon we will ever get. Am I wrong?
No.
Okay.
The only thing about it is I'm going to bring this up. Everything has a universes or through the omen paths equivalent, but we don't know how that is going to play out in the long run for people who are like, yeah,
True.
But it already has this version, right? This is digital only. We don't know if the card assets will be moved to paper. It has been rewritten to remove the keywords as well. It just shows up as one big old blob of text. Somebody named Quint. That exists inside through the omen path because they've renamed everything. So for those people that are like, well, actually...
Fair. But yeah, as of now, digital only. Obviously could be. Who knows? We'll see. But yeah, I think this is a card that it's a little bit longer term for sure. We're looking at least, I'd imagine, 8 to 9 months before we see any kind of recovery on the price to begin with.
Yep.
But at $1 or less per copy, I'm pretty cool sitting on a few bricks of this and just chilling.
Yep.
You know, you can get play sets for $1.49 each. Within the first couple there's only 3 pages. And the largest brick is like 14. So this is one that pretty quickly shoots up when you're looking at actual bricks. But yeah, I think it's great.
Somebody bought a 37.
Yeah.
A brick of 37 sold today. The largest quantity so far sold in a single order is 41. Or from a single vendor is 41. So this card is moving. I believe in it. I mentioned it in the Hype episode that's over on Patreon. Just a $1. Just $1 due for that. You espouse everything that I mentioned about this card. I'll hold off on some of my other thoughts about where this goes immediately. I bought my copies of this today. I think I bought 12 copies, if memory serves, for similar reasons. I wanted to get in when I could get a brick. I do believe this is going to float a little bit lower. I just got a bit anxious with some other cards in the set. So I picked this up, and I'm just going to sit on it for a while. I have my 4 copies for play and then several for speculation because for reasons you've espoused and I've espoused, I believe in this card in the long term.
Yeah.
Now, for me, I'm swinging in literally the opposite direction per color pie, and I am looking at Boon Reflection, which is a white card. Specifically from Double Masters, that's what I was taking all my notes on. So you all get this information. Boon Reflection is a white enchantment. It costs 4 and a white, and it says, if you would gain life, you gain twice that much life instead.
Very good.
Yes. I had this on my list in February of 2023. At that point, CK was buying 2 at $2. I don't have retail data from back that far. And there were 120 listings on TCG Player for $4.63 for this card. And it did exactly what Vicious Shadows did, which is just, it was a slow and steady gainer. It never triggered any flags. It just eventually started to creep up. Not even recently, when I brought up the stocks graph, it just goes vertical. But like I said, I've had this on my list for so long, I just needed a reason to actually bring it up to a point where, like, the difference between market and buy list was enough to buy in. I couldn't really see a future where saying, all right, buying in now is the time, because it was just, like, steady, but not
there was no
in
flashpoint.
It was steady, but not in a speculative way. I could always tell you why this card was good, but never why people are going to go out and make a run. But since then, for the last couple of months, we just kind of got like banger after banger after banger of Commander for this card.
Yeah.
Right now, CK is buying 20 copies at $11. They had 2 copies for sale at $18. There were 63 individual listings on TCG Player, and the market was $14.50. So the gap has definitely closed a lot in terms of percentage. What do you do with this card in Commander? Well, exactly what it says. This goes in life gain decks and then like life-based shenanigan decks where you want to pay an absurd amount of life for a thing. That kind of stuff. So, as expected, we see this card being played in decks that care about its own life total for a myriad of reasons. A lot of decks care that you gain life this turn and then trigger any number of cards in play. And these can be seen in decks helmed by Lathiel, the Boundless Dawn, which is a unicorn, Will, Scion of Peace from Woe, I believe. No,
Yes.
Woe Commander. So, Will is the Azorius version, and the other one in the pair is the Rakdos version and cares about life loss. So this is kind of the reflection that we're seeing on this. There are utility commanders like Liesa, Shroud of Dusk, and Lycia, Sanguine, Tribune that remain cheap as commanders, in quotes, because their static abilities also allow you to pay life instead of X. Sorry, pay life instead of the colorless costs on them. But they also offer like distinct play patterns. They can be like a Staxi piece or a Voltron piece, respectively. And then you have more combo style commanders like Hope, Esthium, and Bilbo, Birthday Celebrant, that want to leverage a large amount of life gain per turn to kind of turn the corner and win. Bilbo specifically winning the game at 111 life. And so overall, we're actually seeing this card play in a lot of palatable themes because it can help end the game quickly and almost in a very fair and balanced kind of way. Life gain is the 4th most popular theme, according to Rec, with 120,000 unique deck submissions, 10% of which contain Boon Reflection. So that's about 12,000 decks total.
Pretty good.
And outside of life gain, it's played in about 25,000 decks. And in the grand scheme, these are actually really small numbers for play, but the popularity of the card and theme is what we're looking at. Over time, life gain was a fairly boring game plan that slowly and ploddingly morphed into something with a lot of interactions based around it, and also offered some Staxy elements. Grand Augustine the Fourth, is that the full name of the thing?
Grand Arbiter Augustine.
Grand
IV,
Arbiter
yes.
Augustine the Fourth is in the list of decks that play Boon Reflection, for instance. So we'll see this morph of life gain decks from being part control with a lot of wrath effects to keep the board clear because there wasn't a good way to end the game, to now where we have a bevy of ways to end games quickly, and there's no one best way to build this style of deck. So opening this up allows individuals to kind of put their spin, their fingerprints on its rather alluring like play style, and it can't be understated. With that comes a look at older cards that synergize really well. So for instance, how many of you, dear listeners, know about the card Tainted Sigil? Exactly. I didn't even think to link to this, but I'll bring it up real quick on Scryfall, and I'll read it off for those that can't see. Tainted Sigil, 1 and Orzhov for an artifact. Tap, sacrifice Tainted Sigil. You gain life equal to the total life lost by all players this turn. Guess what card is played alongside Boon Reflection and Commander? An old card that people have gone back to find. Tainted Sigil.
Yep.
And the last thing that I'll say is currently, as a strategy, one of the biggest things that makes Life Gain palatable as a theme to play against is the fact that even at infinite life, a player can be knocked out by 21 commander damage, yet again, keeping things in check. Or 10 infect, if that's also something that you like to dagger people about here and there. You can be at the U.S. National debt total of life, but 21 commander damage and 10 infect are just going to clean you out. Now, when I was taking my notes, there were 105 copies left on TCG Player. There were 2 pages, and there were no notable quantities on any singular vendor, so this has all been spread out across people. This is quietly selling 1 or 2 copies a day, which is why this snuck past me. But at this rate, we'll sell through stock in about 3 months with no restock in sight. And then this becomes a $20 card and then a $40 card very, very quickly when we're looking at LP and near mint. And eventually the other gradings will follow suit. CK is... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, you're good.
All right. CK is selling below what the market will end up being in a few days, so there actually is an opportunity for arbitrage in that direction, CK to TCG Player. And TCG Player will be zeroed out in about 3 months, and I don't think that buy list will accommodate the new $20 TCG price tag immediately. So if you are just buying from TCG Player right now, your best move is to kind of sit and relist, because I don't think CK is going to pull up when this is a $40 card and say $35 for this, please. You know, or we'll pay you $35 for this. I don't think they'll hold off. We'll just kind of cut bait on it. If you have a back stock and you've been waiting to move them, listing above $20 should get them sold within the next few weeks. I don't think there's a wrong or a right way to handle this card, but if you have a back stock of these, I don't think you need a stockpile anymore. You can just shove. You mentioned reprint equity on Shadow of the Goblin. I think it's going to be very difficult to do in a supplemental set, because generally we get weird graveyard things in some of those, even in some of the commander decks.
Yeah.
So it makes that card very dangerous. Reprint equity on this has actually been nigh infinite, but we just haven't had it. This is an innocent card, generally speaking, and it could have been reprinted any number of times in Commander product, but it seems that WotC no longer wants to dedicate decks to just life gain like they have in the past. So the days of the Oloro constructed deck are kind of gone. But the moment they turn around on that, though, we should expect a reprint on this and a few other similar cards like Beacon of Immortality, another card that just seemingly hasn't caught a reprint. So all in all, I think this card moves pretty quickly. I think it's a pretty easy pick. Overall, it's a pretty good look at. Quantity-wise, I don't own any of these, and I don't think there's a wrong number to pick up on, because, again, this just keeps moving reliably. It's not like this card's been outclassed. It's not like there's a whole lot of other things that actually do the same thing. There's no... this isn't doubling season with, 4 different versions behind it. It's Boon Reflection, and that's it, really.
Yeah.
And one of the things I didn't mention, and I don't know if you've keyed on it or not, is that Life Gain as a whole is where most players start when they are new.
Yeah.
And they're like, I want to build a deck. Life Gain's pretty cool. I don't die because quickly when I have a lot of life. Exactly, so let me do that. And it still moves to casuals and individuals. Do I think that's where a lot of the stock went? Yes, but it's difficult to suss out and prove, because playing at a kitchen table, that was never my experience. Talking with casual players that play casual Commander, They might have a life gain deck, but it's not a kitchen table deck. It's a commander deck, which means they probably bought it off TCG Player and they would follow something on rec. It's really difficult to kind of see where these are moving to for people that don't play commander. Like, where did all the 2x2 stock go? Did it actually flow out to commander players? No, it's probably sitting at homes being played at kitchen tables with cards like Tainted Sigil and Beacon of Immortality and all these other cards. Which leads me into my last piece on this, which is just a pure aside. There are a lot of other cards that actually run alongside Boon Reflection that have been slow and steady gainers. I've mentioned Beacon of Immortality. It's $16. But the Gaffer from Lord of the Rings is a $10 card that just draws you a single card at end of turn if you've gained enough life. Have people noticed that the Gaffer has been showing up on stocks over the last couple of months because it's just been a steady gainer? I don't know. Eventually, you just kind of turned a blind eye to this because you've just seen it all the time. Yeah. Archangel of Thune, the old Birthing Pod combo piece. That's a $50 card again. All right. Alhammarret's Archive is $20. That draws you a card. It doubles your life gain, I think, or it adds an additional one on top of it, and it does something else. Like, awesome. It fits in the theme. People are playing it alongside. There's a lot of meat on this bone, on the life gain bone, so to speak. And then looking broader, while I've discussed Boon Reflection today, I'd actually encourage you to go back through your backstock and take a look for any of these older cards that are there in the life gain theme. If you have them, move out. Turn that money back around and either reinvest in something else or put it in your pocket. Like we talk about up top. That's what we want to do here. We want to make this game easier and cheaper for people to afford. This is an option to do so. There's a lot of opportunity here. You can basically just buy the core of the life gain deck several times over, relist it if you want, and come out the other side with a little more scratch in your pocket if you'd like. All these cards move at a reasonable enough rate. Yeah. You don't have to go and buy out all 105 copies of Boon Reflection. You can buy 4, you can buy 8. You can list them and they'll steadily sell. Same thing with Beacon Immortality. Tainted Sigil has a little bit of chew to it. There's a lot going on. I would recommend you look into this. This is one of those themes where I can say, like, hey, don't just sit at the top, look at the middle. Look at what's being played in the middle of the percentage breakdown on rec. People are still buying those cards. There's no prescriptive way to do this. There's no best way to do this. This is what people like to do with this, and that's it. That's awesome. Have fun. Enjoy. Spend some time. Do a little research.
Yeah, the best part about this card to me is, so there are, I think it was 55 near mint copies of the Double Master version, right? There are 28 total listings of LP and near mint. That's it, listed sellers of the original art.
Oh, the one from Shadowmoor?
Shadowmoor. The original art reaches $20 by the end of the second page.
Yeah.
Which means that once that is gone, all of the Double Masters is as well, up to that point at least.
Yeah, you're seeing what I was, which is just, it runs up to 20, and then it runs up to 40, and then for whatever reason, it's a $100 card for the Shadowmoor version. The 2x.
So that's another opportunity for that to explode.
Yeah, the 2x2 is a little bit better, where it just hangs out around 20 for a little bit before it becomes a $40 card. And once it's a $40 card in like 2 sales, it's a $60 card. Like, this card is going to just disappear and be relisted at a frighteningly high price. But people will still buy it. They're still buying Archangel of Thune, which is a $50 card. The reason I wanted to bring that up. They are willing to put time and money into this theme. It's like dragons.
Yep.
Like, people love it. They make a new dragon, people are going to buy it. People who have dragon decks wanted Ancient Copper Dragon. They bought it. They wanted Old Gnawbone. They do cool things. Cool, buy it. Yeah, exactly. Hellkite Overlord, all this other stuff. Udvara Hellkite, that was just expensive because it was a dragon that did a thing with other dragons. Like, cool, gimme. The core set 19 or 20, there was a named dragon that was like bad, and then it got up to like $7-8 before it was reprinted again.
Yeah.
I can't remember what it is, but it was just impressive.
It was like a 4-mana red dragon that did like damage or something like that. FTK maybe?
Yeah, it was like really innocuous. It didn't do anything good. It was just a named dragon and people bought it. Like, they're going to do the same thing with this theme
for my Legends binder.
Yeah, right.
Can't do that anymore. You need like 12 binders.
Oh my But yeah, like I just think, like I said, I'm starting with Boon Reflection. I gave some other options for this. Investigate the life gain theme. I think this is another one of those where you just can't go wrong. You can pretty much pick anything that gains life in quantity.
Yeah.
And you'll be fine. Exactly. I think the most agnostic card that I mentioned was Alhammar's Archive because it's an artifact and it just draws an extra card as one of its static abilities. Cool. Yeah. Awesome. Like that card does things, and that's why it's $20 compared to Beacon of Immortality, which is $16. It just doubles your life total. That's easy. And then you have any number of ways to dump that life total or win the game. Like, cool. You do you. Be expressive. I think this is a theme that people just kind of sleep on because, like I mentioned, it's a very casual thing of like, hey, I want to get a bunch of life. Like, okay, and then do what? I don't know.
Those invisibles.
Yeah. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I don't want to lose the game. Like, okay, cool. Well, Bilbo lets you just win the game. Lathiel lets you just kind of, like, make tokens, I believe. Right? No, it's +1/+1 counters. I'm sorry. You gain life, you put a bunch of +1/+1 counters on a creature, you just grow your army with Lathiel. You can stack people out in life gain. You can keep your commander cheap with life gain. Yeah, you can do whatever you want. Like, life gain is the most open-ended theme I think I've really seen on Rec. Like, Watsu's done a very good job with it. So, here we are. All right. Anything else before we cut out?
No.
All right. So for at MtG Cabalcast on Twitter, Facebook, Patreon, and YouTube, I am at Halt. I am Reptar. You are
at Damon_Thurston.
And we'll see you in 2 weeks.